People with extraordinary ability have this in common. They don't like to spend their afternoons assembling documentation for USCIS to prove their extraordinary ability. But documentary evidence is the star of the show in an EB-1A case. You see, USCIS has this charming habit of telling anyone who cares to listen that the EB-1A category is restrictive, requiring extensive documentation by statute. So your case is going to require documents, lots of documents. And if you're going through the EB-1A case without a lawyer, perhaps because a lawyer is out of your budget or because Kyle from Reddit told you you don't need one, this video's for you. I'm going to give you a peek at some items on a checklist that my law firm uses in evaluating each and every document before it goes into a final submission to USCIS. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Stefanakorli, and I'm here to do for you what so many people have done for me throughout the years, and that is to provide important information that can maybe change a life or two. Now, this EB-1A video just started, but if the thought of wrestling with immigration rules and processes makes you long for simpler days of, say, the Mongol Empire, or maybe you simply just want someone else to handle your case, or maybe you have a unique situation, or just want to move speedily, my contact information is in the description. Okay, items on a checklist that my firm uses. Put this on your checklist. The document successfully establishes to a neutral viewer who's not an expert in your field what it is meant to establish. Make sure the evidence actually says what you need it to say. Don't assume, don't just hope. An example, if you're trying to establish that there's an article about you in a major publication, this criterion, the rule requires that the media have an author, a title, and a date of publication. As simple as it sounds, you should be careful to ensure that the media, the article, has all of that, particularly the author. You might be surprised by how many articles from major media sources do not include an author. Those articles won't count. Another example, if you're looking to show that you have or had a leadership role pursuant to this criterion, and you say, I'm going to submit incorporation documents. Well, you have a sensible plan. You do. But just a tiny point, does your actual name appear on them? Sounds simple, I know, and you know you're the founder of the business, but USCIS doesn't know that. And without your name on the incorporation documents, you're not doing a good job of convincing USCIS of that fact. Another example, related to this criterion. You're trying to establish that your salary was high in 2023 compared to the salary of others. So you present data to demonstrate how much others in the field earned. You present a salary survey, but are the salaries shown for someone who has your job title? Does the document show that the salaries are for those working in the right geographical area? Does the document show that the data is for income earned in 2023? Final example. Maybe you're trying to corroborate what appears in a letter that you gave an address to the academic elite of America. Does the article that you're submitting, does it have enough for someone to have reasonably come to that conclusion? Or do you only have a local news article showing that you gave a talk to 8 people at a community college? Now I get it. It's monkey work to carefully and precisely articulate exactly what you need each document to establish, and then to confirm that each document establishes what you need. But it's important work. You need to get the small things right, or you need to hire a lawyer to get them right for you. Put this on a checklist also. The evidence comes from an authoritative source that lacks the appearance of bias. Have evidence from credible sources. There are obviously extremes. The New York Times, great. Your cousin's blog, bad. But there's a middle ground too. Some dodgy news website with a bunch of ads and pop-ups, or some media in an authoritative publication that reads like poorly disguised marketing that you or your company paid for. Those don't look great. From those sources, red flags abound. And you know there's a cognitive bias that comes into play here. You present material that has a bunch of red flags, and then the adjudicator may unconsciously think that other aspects of your case, maybe your entire case, is shoddy. You don't want that. Another thing to evaluate when it comes to sources you use, the appearance of bias. Try not to use sources that might be obviously biased about a particular point that you are using that source to establish. For example, let's say you're trying to establish that a particular organization is distinguished, as required by this criterion. Sometimes someone without a lawyer will submit evidence from the organization's own website or marketing materials. That's not ideal. Or another example, in trying to show that a publication is major, which is sometimes required by these criteria, you'll want to present objective evidence that doesn't have the appearance of bias. But often someone without a lawyer will submit evidence from the publications themselves. Not ideal. Put this on your checklist too. The document appears to be legitimate. Your document should have the indicia of legitimate documents. I've seen people disregard this, and these people now live in their countries of origin, which are admittedly nice places. Anyway, for a document from, say, a stodgy organization, maybe a bank or an accounting firm or a university, take a good look at it. Does it appear legitimate? You might ask yourself, for example, does the document have letterhead, official looking letterhead? That's one of many questions you might ask. Or if it's a letter, do the letters have letterhead and the addresses of the letter writers and the signatures of the letter writers? If they don't, it appears like they are maybe not legitimate. And this is an appearance you want to avoid. Other common ways a document may appear illegitimate: poor quality photocopying. Think blurry text. Think low resolution scanning that makes certain parts of the document hard to read. Think screen grabs that crop out significant parts of the screen. Another way, inconsistent dates. Think dates that don't align with claimed timelines, or dates that contradict other submitted documents. Another way, inconsistent information, not including dates, obviously. Think details that contradict information contained in the very same document or other documents. Think misspellings or inconsistent factual information. Strange formatting or formatting inconsistencies is another way that documents sometimes appear illegitimate. And here's another way, writing style. For example, grammatic errors or typos in documents, official documents, the kind of document that typically undergo review. Of course, your documents will actually be legitimate. I know they will. You would not be foolish enough to submit illegitimate documents. But if they appear illegitimate and you can fix the illegitimate appearance, maybe by replacing the document, that is something that you should really consider doing. Another item to put on your checklist. It's sort of related to what we just talked about. The checklist item is the document is not inconsistent with other documents. If one document contradicts or is not consistent with another, then you're going to want to think twice about including both. Or you're going to want to be sure that you convincingly explain the differences. The issue with inconsistent documents comes up often when dealing with data. For example, you might see this issue of inconsistency when it comes to wage data. One might include 2 surveys that show salary for a particular role that are meaningfully different. And then one does not go on to offer an explanation of the differences or explain which one is right. USCIS may sink its ferocious teeth into both the documents and tear them both to shreds, figuratively speaking. Remember, each document does not exist in a vacuum. Also, remember, someone at USCIS might very well notice the inconsistency between documents. They notice nothing except inconsistencies. They're like your ex-spouse's attorney in that way. Here's another thing that you should put on your checklist. The evidence has all the necessary or helpful supporting evidence that it should have. Don't forget that. Sometimes you would be an idiot not to have evidence to support your evidence. Here's an example. A publication calls you brilliant. You would be foolish not to have, unless the publication is something with the stature of, say, the New York Times, additional evidence to prove that the publication that called you brilliant is itself significant enough for its opinion to matter. Another example, if you publish research in a renowned journal, you may find it useful to provide evidence not just that you published research, but also of the journal's impact. You may know it's a renowned journal, but does a layperson? Another example, you show through evidence, of course, that you've authored a certain number of articles. You may find it useful to have additional evidence that would force someone to come to the conclusion that that number of articles that you've published is a significant number in your field. I can go on with examples, but I won't. Sometimes the supporting evidence for evidence is necessary, for example, to satisfy one of the 10 EB-1A criteria. Other times it's just useful to establish that you are in the small percentage at the top of your field, or that you have sustained national or international acclaim. Now remember this, when it comes to this evidence, the evidence that supports other evidence, you need to evaluate it too. That means you need to take a trip back to the top of that checklist and go through all the checklist items to make sure that that evidence is good as well. You got a peek at the process that we go through in evaluating documents to include in our clients' EB-1A petition packages. You got to look at some of our checklist. I hope it helps. Speaking of help, I would be remiss if I did not mention that at my law firm we handle EB-1A cases from start to finish, helping talented, high-skilled professionals throughout the entire process, building winning cases for them. So if you're staring at a blank Word document when you are working on your EB-1A case, or have a unique situation, or are aiming for a swift process, or simply seeking expert legal guidance throughout the entire process, write to me. My contact information is in the description. And subscribe, because there will be more of this on the way.